Hey everybody, welcome back to the second of our three streams we're doing this week about Saints Row the Third, doing some support for the game since it's getting ported out to Switch and it is coming out this Friday. I'm Josh Stinson, I'm the video editor here and the stream host or stream czar or whatever you feel like calling me this time. We got a new person who hasn't been on the stream before. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Phillipe Loren.
I put in the wrong name in the lower
I'm sorry.
third.
You need to fix your car on here. So my name is Jacques Hennequet. I've been working at Volition since 2003, basically. So quite a while, as you can tell from, and you guys have suggested that I stop by to talk to you a little bit, I think, about some of the acting on SR3 and some of the other stuff. And thinking of the acting, obviously it's all about the writing, and I wish we could have the guy who wrote all that stuff with us, because it would be really cool if we did. And his name is Steve Jaros, and we tried to get him, right?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, we also have our community developer director, Mike Watson, as usual, on our stream, just running things, talking in the chat. Hey, Mike.
Hey, guys, Mike Watson here. One quick update for Saints Row 3 Switch is the Australian date is delayed to June 7th due to production issues. Everything else is right on track for the rest of the world. And I'm going to turn you back over to Josh.
But yeah, like you were saying, it's a real shame. There's no way we could just press a button and just make Steve Jaros appear on the screen.
I know,
it's just doing some stream magic over here.
That's just too bad.
Oh my God, it's Steve! Hello!
Oh my God.
Holy shit.
Hey, hi.
Boy, you've changed.
The magic of technology.
It's only been what? How long has it been since Saints Row 3?
God.
Saints Row 3 was 2011, right?
Yeah, so 8 years?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, you were practically a child.
It's like going through college twice.
I know. Well, don't tell me that, right? Yeah.
But
so where do we start?
I mean, want to talk about the writing and also the stuff that you're involved in. We might as well just start talking about something that I don't know how many fans know about this. It's written on the wiki and stuff. I checked. But you voiced a character in Saints Row the Third.
I did?
I think you did.
You're right. Well, so here's the truth, right? Is he, meaning this character here, Steve Jaros, kind of conned me into doing that, right? So, because I didn't really want to. And we may want to get into why he wanted me to do this, because I suspect his intentions were not entirely, let us say, pure. But never mind, we can dig into that one. But he got me to play a Belgian character, not French, a Belgian character named Phillipe Loren, who is, of course, a villain, because, he's not going to give me a good guy role, right? And then he promptly killed me after putting me on the scene, and so I did that, yes. And as you probably noticed if you listen to the game, I'm not a professional actor. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do it. The other actors who were professionals were really friendly and encouraging, and Steve was on the spot, and I had a lot of fun. I think everybody had fun, and it was a great experience. I'll never forgive Steve, but it was a great experience.
So, you mentioned the other actors were being supportive too. So when you recorded the VO, did you have to go to the West Coast where they also do their VO stuff?
Oh, sure. Okay. But we were there anyway because often, most of the time, Steve and I both went to the VO recording sessions. I didn't go to all of them, but I went to a bunch of them.
Okay.
So, but I was in the booth and listening. And it was a first for me to go to the other side, right, and work with them. And several of them were in the booth when we recorded that.
Okay.
And I think they got a good giggle of seeing your complete amateur get in there and try to do something with them. And then and it was fun. And so, I don't know if you want to get into sort of how I came to do that, but Steve and I had long-standing conversations about, I had to sort of be in my bonnet about often, films or games casting people who were supposed to be from a certain country who weren't, and clearly weren't, right? So you're supposed to have a French guy, and their French accent is so phony that you can tell they've never even been to France or read a word of French. So we had talked about that a bunch of times, and I think that's probably part of why he wanted to cast me in there. It was like, you think a French person would do better? Why don't you come show us, right? And of course, he made me Belgian out of spite. That was entirely spiteful, I think. It was just a dig, wasn't it?
But I think I'm trying to remember the Belgian thing. I think it was, if I recall correctly, and I may be remembering this wrong, that there was a crack about the guy someone made a crack about him being French, and it's like, okay, it'll be Belgian, fine, you know what I mean? And it was more of a throwaway thing than anything else. But I think if I recall correctly, and it could be a while. So we did do auditions for Philippe before you were cast.
Oh, you did?
And we did. We had auditions, and we had auditions that came through, and I remember we were listening to them, and you at one point were like, "These guys don't sound like they're French," and I'm like, "Well, then fuck it, dude. Like, you're French. Let's do it."
But then you're not evil at all, so it doesn't work as well for me. It's not out of spite.
Yeah, it wasn't out of spite. It was an egomania.
But
it was fun. It was just a good.
You might be right.
I think that it was. I mean, I thought it was really neat. The thing that was funny about it, of course, is when you read on the forums and people go and say, "This guy's got a total fake accent." It's like, what? Like, you can't please anybody. I always think that's really funny.
I thought there was some real karmic justice in there. You know, because I complained about the funny French accents, and then I don't think there were that many, but I saw at least one who was like, "This guy is clearly not French." You know? And to tell the truth, I'm not Belgian.
That's right.
And then
accents are really funny too, because it's like there's this weird thing where it's like people sometimes, like, when they say that something doesn't sound like a real X accent, they mean it doesn't sound like what they imagine a real accent could be, but like that X accent still might not actually be what they sound like. You know what I mean? Like, I remember, like that happened in another on Saints Row 4. We were casting the female player with the French accent, and there was another situation where there was someone that auditioned from that was like fucking French, and I remember Scott was like, "This is the fakest accent of all of them. Like, that's the one that's actually from France, Scott." You know what I mean? Like, it's just this interesting thing, and now he works at UB, so he gets all the French he can handle.
Well, and French and Canadian, yeah, but so I'll tell you this as an ex-Frenchman, right? Because I'm an American citizen and I've been for a while, but I was born and raised in France, right? When I watch a film with actors that are supposed to be French, and it's not so much the accent as much as when they have to supposedly speak French, you know instantly whether they're really French or not. And in many cases, they're not. Let's stop at that, right? Okay, they may be perfectly fine actors, but they're clearly not French. And for a French, it's like if you could imagine going to France and you saw a film in American and you heard someone who doesn't sound remotely like they're American, you would go, "Wait a minute," you know?
Yeah, I have noticed that being a thing in like lots of games specifically, where it's like it either takes place, you know, in a place where everyone speaks a different language or whatever, and even when it's like, I always ask people who like actually are like from that country, and it's always like they speak pretty accurately, but you can totally tell it's like their second language or something like that.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah, and we also we have a question from the chat. Mr. Saints Godzilla asked, "Did you voice Philippe in Saints Row 4 during the GAT loyalty mission?"
No, I did not. They rejected me. I auditioned for it,
Really?
but Steve said, "Nah, we tried that guy. He didn't work out."
He's a liar. He's a liar. During, if I recall correctly, that was during a time when you were in
Montreal.
Canada.
Yeah. And I think you actually had talked to me about potentially doing it And then for whatever reason, it didn't pan out. And
Yeah.
it was fine, and I totally understand it. And to me, it was a great experience to do once. I have no delusions as to my abilities as an actor, so it was great fun to do it. And hopefully, even if my accent sounded phony, I didn't do the game a disservice. The game seemed to have done okay, so it probably was not too terrible. But it was a lot of fun. But no, you're right. I did not do Philippe in SR4. It was a once in a lifetime event.
So, Steve, you mentioned that there were some people that got tried out before you went with him. After you went with Jacques, how much writing was done for Philippe at that point? Like, did his character get changed at all because you chose him over another voice actor, or?
No, the character was basically the character. Like, we knew what he wanted, what we wanted him to go and be and do, and so he was pretty much all defined. The closest thing to things that, like, a lot of times the way that traditionally the way the Saints Row recording has kind of gone was, we record the cutscenes first, and the cutscenes are recorded before we do like mission dialogue stuff, because a lot of times the missions are still being iterated on or changed, or sometimes they don't even have full specs yet. So, like, we knew when they recorded Jacques, we knew what the cutscenes were, and those were the cutscenes. That's what Philippe was doing. We didn't know what, like, any in-game missions or like phone calls and stuff that he would have to do would be at the time, because we didn't know what the scope of that would be yet. But we knew, like, all of the key moments of the character's arc as they would played out in cutscenes. We had those all written and ready to rock. That didn't change. There was no deviation on that plan.
Okay. Also, we have a comment from the chat from one of our big fans who's around a lot, Emmy, who is from France, saying, "You're the most lucky French in the world. I would have killed to get your place."
As Phillipe Loren, or working at Volition on Saints Row?
I mean, she'll get back to us,
Yeah,
I
hopefully
suppose.
she does. Please. Emmy sounds like, okay, so you're French. I'm trying to guess what the... Comment est-ce que vous vous appelez, Emmy? C'est votre prénom, donc j'imagine. Dites-nous comment vous vous appelez. That was my little bit in French. I won't go back to it. One thing I don't know if people know that, but Steve and I actually kind of go way back, right? We go way back to SR1, Saints Row 1. We started working together on that game in 2003, right? 4.
Yeah, 4.
4. So it's also not a complete coincidence that he offered me to play this role. We had been working together for a bunch of years already by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Emmy got back to us. She says both.
Both what? Oh.
Working here and getting to voice Philippe.
I still don't know what her first name is, though. But that's okay. The web is all about anonymity, right? So it's fine. I am very lucky. You're right. And I am aware of the fact that I am lucky to work with those wonderful people and this wonderful man. And it is unfortunately their bad luck that they had to work with me for many years. But yes, I am aware of it. Yeah. It's been great. It's been a lot of fun. And you probably know, or you may not know, that Steve is no longer at Volition, and I miss him. I really miss his presence and his friendship. We still talk regularly, but it's not the same than having him here.
Right.
It was weird when you moved up to Montreal, you know, and there's a part of me that was really sad that my life situation did not allow me, you know what I mean, to go and uproot my family and move to Canada with you. But it was Jacques was huge influence in my in both my writing and my career. And
that's how he started drinking. Yeah,
that's right. It was my crippling gambling addiction. All came from Jacques.
Yeah,
but it was no. I've been very blessed to learn from Jacques, and he's been a hell of a mentor. So I'm very grateful to work with him.
Well, thank you. I would. Yeah, I'm blushing. But
so you mentioned that You're an American citizen now. Did you come over here like as part of like a job thing? Was it coming over here to work in the games industry, or is it?
No, I packed my suitcases. I lived in France, obviously, and I packed my suitcases to come. I came here as a student, but I knew I wanted to move and stay in the United States.
Okay.
I grew up in I'm not going to get into a really long story about my childhood and youth, but I came to study film in New York at NYU, literally with a suitcase, and I knew I wanted to stay. So I started to work pretty quickly, not at all in film. I worked as a packer for a moving company and as what they call a clucker in a nightclub to help pay for my studies at NYU. And then I started working in animation fairly quickly. And, one thing led to another. And I stayed, which is what I had always wanted to do. I love the U.S. I'm very glad I moved here. It doesn't mean I don't love France. I still love my birth country, my country of birth.
Yeah.
But I love the U.S. And so now I'm this sort of weird hybrid that sort of belongs somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, if you know what I mean.
Right.
I'm not completely American. I'm no longer completely French.
Yeah.
And I've been, Jaros-sized, which makes me a citizen of another galaxy altogether.
A fun fact about Jacques is that he's basically the prototype of the most interesting man in the world in the Dos Equis ad. Because I remember, whenever I would hear these stories, I remember like on Saints Row 1, I would ask like questions about something, and then Jacques would be like, "Oh, have you considered blah?" I'm like, "Man, how'd you know that?" And he'd go, "Because I did X, Y, and Z." Like he had an answer for that for like fucking everything. Like, this was my experience when I played in a band. This was my experience when I was working on a trans-African continental race. This was my time. I mean, it was like the most like bizarre shit, and I could not escape. I could not escape. You have a story for everything, Jacques.
That makes me an obnoxious jerk, doesn't it?
No, it was amazing. It was just great. It was just the thing.
Well, I think he's exaggerating, but there's a little bit of that. But he's just maybe slightly exaggerating.
Really, dude, that African race story is amazing.
Well, the race is true. It was called the Paris Dakar. I was a co-pilot on that in 1981. And the band I played in, that was true. I played very poorly. We starved, and it didn't work out too well, but that's true too. But aside from that, there hasn't been that much stuff.
Interesting stories.
We also got a question from the chat asking, how often do you go to Montreal?
Well, I'm going to go back this fall. I haven't been back in a while. We went there for 2.5 years because THQ. So we're going to take you away from Saints Row if we talk about that. Steve and I worked on a couple of other games together, and one of them was called Insane. We were going to make a game with a filmmaker called Guillermo del Toro for THQ, and as the situation developed, there was increasing not pressure, but Danny Bilson at the time in THQ really wanted us to move the production to Montreal because they were opening a new THQ studio there, and they thought that it would be really good to have this game there. The other game they had there was was going to be made by Patrice Desilets, and it was called 1666.
Oh yeah, I remember that game.
Yeah, and they wanted another sort of big tentpole type of title, and so of course with Guillermo del Toro in the mix, that instantly Insane became that. So Danny Bilson really asked me sort of strongly to take some of the team there and go develop the game there. We also had concerns about our ability to fully staff the team here while we were finishing the other projects. So I agreed to go there and try to take the key people with me. A few were able to come. Steve was not. I was really sad that he couldn't. And then it turned out that not that long after we got there, THQ went bankrupt and the project was canceled. So the rest is history. But we were kind of left stranded in Montreal, so to speak. So that's why I spent a couple of years, 2.5 years actually there. And then I came back to Volition, and Steve at that time had moved on his own side and was no longer working at Volition. So I was orphaned that way.
Oh.
But I don't go back that often. I'm going to go back this fall because I have a very good friend there, and I want to go see him. I haven't seen him in a while, he and his wife. But not often. But I like the city a lot. It's a really nice city.
I've always wanted to go there. I've been in Canada for like a total of like 10 minutes maybe.
I say it was a flight sort of transfer.
It was, I grew up in Michigan and we just like went over the border for like a second and then came back.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because we were fairly close to it.
I recommend visiting Montreal if you can. It's a wonderful city. It's full of really, really nice people. On average, right? Of course, it's a generalization. But very friendly people. And it's a pleasant city because it's not overwhelming. It's a big city, but it doesn't feel like New York or LA, where the individual kind of feels almost crushed.
Yeah.
It still has human size.
Okay.
So it's and the food is pretty good. It's pretty close to France, if you ask me.
If there's any reason to go somewhere, it's for the food, honestly.
Well, take a look at my belly and you'll know my opinion on the topic.
Yeah. It looks like we have another question. This is from, oh no, their name is so long and it's so tiny, but Gaming Something asking, how do you guys get Burt Reynolds in the game?
Oh, that's a Steve question.
That like the logistics of it, or so how we got Burt Reynolds in the game was we asked if we could have Burt Reynolds in the game. Like I wish there was a more like elegant story to getting Burt Reynolds, but it was more driven of we knew when we were writing the thing that it would be really fun to go and have the mayor of this fucked up city be a real person that's just kind of a more whimsical version of them, and so we were thinking about names. And it's weird when you're going through that sort of process because it's like you want to pick a name that's like there's like something funny about it, but also like it's pretty cool. You know what I mean? And so you're kind of going through names that you think go and fit up. We're like, yeah, Burt Reynolds, fuck yeah, dude. If it's Burt Reynolds, that would be amazing. And so then it's just like once you have the plan, then it's just you go and you reach out to Burt Reynolds' people and like, hey, we want to go and have Burt Reynolds be the mayor. And this is like these are all the scripts that you'll do. And what do you say? And he agreed to it, and that was really exciting. It also led to one of the most mortifying moments of my and exciting part of my career, where right before he approved all the cutscenes. He was super excited, and then he got like it was the day before we were supposed to record, and he got what some of the in-game lines were, and he fucking hated his in-game lines.
What?
And I know this because I was sent a PDF of his handwritten notes about every single thing that he hated about the script, and so like, okay, well, we can fix this. And so that night I was up and I rewrote everything, and I sent it, I sent it back to the guy. I'm like, okay, here's the new script. This is what we're doing. And the next day, because like we recorded in his hometown, because Burt doesn't travel. Burt stays in the Burtland, and we're waiting, and he doesn't show up, and he doesn't show up, and he doesn't show up. We're like, oh fuck, man! Like, is Burt mad? What do we do? And then he shows up, and he comes in. He's got the printed out scripts in his hand, and he looks at me, and my heart grew 3 sizes because he's like, this is fucking great. I'm like, oh, thank God. He's like, I didn't like it the other night, but you fixed it, kid. This is awesome. Like, yeah, all right, let's go, Burt. And so then we go and we start recording it, and it was really great. And I remember his handler was with him, and at one point, he made a line because like Burt has a couple exchanges with Oleg, and he talks about like they have a veiled reference to Burt fighting Oleg in the Cold War,
mm-hmm.
and Burt goes and it's like, oh it's like this is great. I love this line. This is great. And so then I look over and then I'm like, oh, Burt, if it was up to me, where THQ would give me the money, like I think that we should do a game that's about Burt Reynolds in the Cold War, like just beaten up, is just saving the Cold War for America. Like it's just Burt Reynolds as like America, Captain America fucking up the Soviets. And he's like, I want that role. That's amazing. I'll do it. And then Burt Reynolds looks at me. And he's like, how do we make this happen? Like, who do you talk to? I'm like, oh my god, it can't actually happen. Like, I'm just I'm a guy saying shit. But it made me really happy that Burt Reynolds wanted to go and punch KGB officers in the face. And
That's incredible.
That was a joy. So it was from a moment that was really scary for me of just getting handwritten hate mail from Burt Reynolds to him being really happy and excited and feeling really good about everything, and that was nice.
Do you remember any specific changes he wanted, or do you remember anything that was like very like? Was it just like very specific wording things, or was it like big rewrites for his character?
No, it wasn't big rewrites. A lot of it was like it was weird. Like there was some of it was just like I don't like this sort of direction with you know what I mean, or whatever, which is totally fine. We just go and change it. But there was one line that I really, really liked, and that I didn't want to. And I'm like, oh, he mentioned if he hated this line, like he like underlined it. He's like, stupid hate, and he like boxed this line up in the script. And it was my favorite line that he had. And so I'm like, I can't change it because I love it. But I got to make him love it. So, and all I did was because it became clear that there was a line where he's talking to Oleg about the time they spent in the Cold War together, of fighting against each other, and it ended with him calling Oleg comrade, and it was supposed to be sarcastic, but I think Burt read it and he thought that it meant that he was like on board with communism.
Okay.
And so I just kept the entire same line the same, and I replaced comrade with him calling him a commie, and yeah, all right, I get it. And so that was just like that was a weird thing. I think he was I think as soon as he became clear that he was not he was being portrayed as just Captain America, the mayor.
Right.
He was more on board. They also did have some strange requests though. It's like Burt Reynolds cannot be set on fire. Like he's immune to flames, and unlike the other homies, like he's like Burt Reynolds will not be lit on fire.
When we had Kate Nelson on the stream earlier this week, she also brought that up, that like a lot of celebrities had like certain guidelines for what could and could not be done to them in a game.
Well, and that makes sense too, right? I mean, it's different when a person's playing a person, whereas a person's playing themselves. You know what I mean? Like, I think if Burt Reynolds was cast to play, whatever, Killbane, you know what I mean? Then I don't think he would give a shit because he's just playing a character. But when you say Burt Reynolds is you know what I mean? You're trying to go and protect the way you're perceived and all that. And obviously, who wants to be perceived as being on fire? It was a very odd request, but it was pretty great.
Huh. We also got another question from the chat asking, was there any specific reason for all of the wrestling elements in SR3?
I'm a big wrestling fan.
All right.
Like it's an Occam's razor. It's the best. It's the sport of kings. I fucking love wrestling, and I try to subvert everything I have with a little bit of a wrestling reference here or there. So yeah, I'm a big mark, and I'm unapologetic, and it's great. Wrestling is the best.
I mean, I've been a person who I feel like I didn't grow up with wrestling. It was just one of those things where I just kind of missed out on it, and I feel bad that I missed out on it because, like, no matter who it is, no matter what walk of life they are, like, tons of people on my Twitter timeline, including people from the games industry and a bunch of other industries, anytime WrestleMania happens, they're all tweeting about it.
Well,
Every single one of them.
Wrestling is live theater writ large, right? Like, that's what makes it so great. It's pageantry, and there's like the enthusiasm, and it's great. It's a lot of fun. And when you compare like something like say WrestleMania to like the Super Bowl, it's kind of funny because like I'm imagining, like when you go to like if you spend a bunch of money to go and travel to your pilgrimage for WrestleMania, like that like those guys are putting on the best show that they possibly can for you for those next 3 hours. Like they want to entertain you for for an hour. In the case of this last WrestleMania, like 7 hours, went on forever. But the people that you pay money to go to the Super Bowl, like half of that audience is going home unhappy. You know what I mean? Like you're flying there, and half of you are gonna feel great, and the other half are gonna be, oh my god, and they're gonna be fucking really miserable on the way back. And so I like to hedge my bets with knowing that I'm gonna be happy. So I love I love me some wrestling. It's still real to me, damn it.
And for what it's worth, and to show you that how we work here,
Uh-huh.
wrestling does nothing for me.
Okay.
Like it bores me to tears.
You just haven't seen the right wrestling.
Yeah, or maybe it's an age thing, you know.
No, I get
I don't know, but I look at it and I go, I don't understand.
Yeah. It's
But
never
he made it shine, that's for sure.
it's never entirely clicked for me, but I feel at least when people post little bits on Twitter or something, every time I watch it, I feel like I come away appreciating whatever I just saw. Especially because it's like there's so much history with that stuff that there's so many like really weird moments you can point to.
Oh, I totally get it, right?
Yeah.
I understand how people can like it.
Yeah.
I understand why they like it.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm just saying that it doesn't do that for me.
Right, right.
Right, and I completely respect the fact that they do. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there are things that I'm fascinated by that a lot of people couldn't care less about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I like, you know, turn-based strategy games.
Me
Not
too.
many, well, we're few, right?
Yeah.
It's not exactly the majority of the gamers, right?
Right.
And I understand. So, but you had that enthusiasm about wrestling, and you probably remember when I was kind of asking you, like, why? You know, like I was genuinely trying to understand why. But he's been a big fan for a long time.
Well, the lead animator on Saints Row 3 also is a big wrestling fan as well, Zach Loren.
Yeah,
And
Zach,
So,
yeah.
So like,
It's a
we were always
conspiracy.
super excited whenever we could go, and like, that's why a lot of the takedowns and stuff in Saints Row 3 are based on wrestling moves and things
Oh,
like
sure.
that, because it's just like those are all
Yeah.
it's just all the things that we
Yeah.
it's just the stuff that you like, you know. And so when you love something, it goes in, it seeps into what you do. It's kind of like when I have I had kids, the elements of family just crept into everything that I write. You know what I mean? Because it's just there's these things that like when it becomes a part of your life or something that you do a lot of, you just can't. You know what I mean? It just seeps into what you do. You
But
know?
you think that comes from wrestling? The elements of family?
Family, absolutely. Yeah. What? I'm sorry.
No, that the elements of family you were referring to, you think that is coming from wrestling?
Oh no! I'm
Oh,
saying
okay,
that,
I misunderstood.
Yeah, when something, when you love something.
Oh, yeah,
which
of
is
course,
a lot.
of course.
It influences what you do. Right?
Of
It's
course.
Just, is what you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, that's
of course. Sometimes I think what you write has elements as even a psychoanalysis or a self-psycho.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. The amount of stuff. Like I wrote a play that like basically every single character in it, and who is all, you know what I mean, is just like different aspects of like, this is how I feel about A, B, or C, or you know what I mean, and
Yeah,
like
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
you have to, because I think that's what makes a compelling character compelling, is that
Sure.
they're fully fleshed out and they have their own wants and desires, and
Sure.
you can go and like, that's the fun part about writing, right? Is like really digging deep into your own neurosis, of which I have plenty.
So going back to the first topic of this stream, when you doing voice acting,
It's a big word, but yeah.
I'll call it that.
Sure.
So
You want an autograph? Because I'll give you one.
Oh
They're
man,
cheap.
I don't have anything for you to write on, but
I'll give it to you for a discount.
yeah. Oh, Mike wants one.
Oh, absolutely. So what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
That's all right. So because you did acting for the game, you had to have a SAG membership, right?
No, they actually used you correct me if I mispronounce it, but I think it was like Taft something waiver. Taft-Hartley waiver, which allowed me to do up to 2 sessions without joining SAG. But if I had done one more session, I would have had to join the union. And it's very clear to me that if I had had to do that, the cost of joining the union would have far exceeded what I would have made from the sessions. So I was not particularly eager to
Right.
have to
Yeah,
join.
I was really curious about that because I know that like joining the union, like the join cost is fairly high.
It's not cheap, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is today, but it's not cheap, and it it's part of what I think people are more aware of it now than they were in the past. But it's very hard to make a living as an actor. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
You know? And I have a lot of respect for the people who manage to do that. Because we sort of take it for granted, but there's a lot of skill and training and effort that goes into, becoming a professional actor or actress. It's really hard.
Yeah.
Dancers and musicians are like that. Artistic professions in general, are not very forgiving. So no, I didn't have to become a member of SAG. I dodged that. But Who knows, right? No, I don't think
so. Actually, before I ask the next thing, we also have another question from the chat. It's somebody asking you, Lone Star asking, could you tell the Dakar Rally story?
That's not going to help the Saints Row much, but sure. Well, before I came to Volition I didn't come to Volition. I came to the U.S. in '81, and prior to that, I went through some relatively difficult times. But anyway, I was working as a soundman for a large radio TV station called Radio Luxembourg. And I worked for their news group in Paris, and as such, I covered a bunch of events, and I was slated to cover an event that was called the Paris-Dakar race, which is a car race for 3 weeks, an endurance race that went from Paris to Dakar in Senegal through the Sahara Desert, and for 3 weeks, and you lived in the desert, slept in the desert, so. And we were about to cover it, and the night before the race was supposed to start, one of the drivers lost his co-pilot.
Right.
And he knew my boss at the news department, and my boss said, Jacques is a pretty good driver, and I think he might be a good guy to have with you. And the guy said, you want to be my co-pilot? And I was like, you mean go in that race with me? And he was like, yeah. He was like, yeah. And he said, can you leave tomorrow at 4 a.m.? You have a passport? And I said, yeah.
Oh my God.
He said, see you at 4 a.m. And next morning at 4 a.m., I was in the car, and we took off. And 3 weeks later, I was back in France after that. It was a very, very memorable thing in my life.
Wow.
It kind of screwed me up in some, whatever. But it was fantastic. The Sahara is a beautiful place. And at that time, that race, the French people, I'm sure there are some French people listening or viewing. And the Paris-Dakar has become a really, really famous race. And it's not even in Africa anymore. It's in South America, I think, today. But at the time, it was still not you had a couple of professional drivers, but most of the people were actually people who just wanted to go on an adventure. And so you had those guys in those cars, and they brought food in the back. And, we all had huge tanks for gasoline. So it had a different atmosphere than it has today, where it's almost like entirely professional stuff.
Okay.
But it was a blast. It was really, we got lost in the desert for a day and a half. That was a little scary. A bunch of people died in the race. I saw actually a car crash and burned, and the people in it died. But it was still an amazing experience. It was very, very interesting. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. One more. You said you were the co-pilot. What were all the responsibilities with that? Because I know that with some there's a co-pilot that's specifically just for saying what is coming up in the route, like turns and stuff. Yeah. You did that?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's cool.
What was really interesting is that when you're doing a rally, you go switch to third gear and go to this speed and. We're in the desert, right? So what I was saying to the pilot was like, when you see a skull on the right, it's time to turn, And we had a
better heed that one. Better look out for that one.
If you see 5 camels on the left, veer there was a lot of, because there was no road. It was across the desert, right? So it was very interesting. That's kind of how we got lost, right?
That's crazy.
It was not hard to get lost, believe me. And some people, seriously, I think 13 people died that year. Wow. A plane got lost, and they couldn't find it for the longest time. The surveillance plane. Yeah, it had to land, and it was actually surveillance plane was yellow. In the Sahara, not a good color, right? So they had the damnedest time finding that poor guy who had to sort of emergency land in there. But so the co-pilot does that. You have that fake book, right?
Yeah.
Next thing
I was pretty sure that's what that was.
Yeah.
Man, that's really cool, though.
It was, but what was really cool was the desert. The desert was just. It's an amazing place. If you have a chance to ever go to the Sahara, wow, it's just incredible. Incredible, really. Unforgettable. probably tougher to do now than when I went there, because there are a lot of political issues in the countries that
Right.
border the Sahara now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You would like it, Steve.
I believe it. It sounds amazing. But this is why I said that you're the most interesting man alive, because you have a story about surviving a 3-week race where 13 people died and there was a missing fucking airplane.
I think your taste is impeccable.
It's, no, I would love to. I would love to go and see that part of the world.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool place, and I was very lucky, as Amy said, to have that opportunity to go there. And it was a fluke, total fluke.
That's, man.
Complete fluke.
Gotta take the opportunity when it comes up. But yeah, going back to the original topic of you voicing Philippe, how weird, like, I was going to ask how weird it was.
It was pretty weird.
Yeah, I bet. But how much, was there any ad-libbing? One?
No.
Okay.
Not that I can remember.
No,
It was all his. He was the puppet master.
Okay.
Yeah,
Pulling
no,
the strings.
Like,
All right.
yeah, no, not.
No
for
ad
that.
libbing. Not even in, there's a passage where I'm like getting really angry at the door because the door is blocked and I want to force my way in.
Right.
Not even there. It was not ad libbed. That
Okay.
was written. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I'm going to assume, I don't actually know this, but Steve, is ad-libbing a pretty rare thing for like VO for games?
No, not the way I tend to work. Actually, like I usually do it. There's a decent amount of it. It's just in the case of this one, because like Philippe's scenes are relatively limited in the right. Like he's at the playing sequence. He's in a smaller place. So like a lot of times the way that I'll work, and this is just I don't know if this is normal. This is kind of what I do. Is I will I'll write things. I'll have an idea. I always do the cutscenes, and then at the end of the session, a lot of times I'll make up stuff based on like what people were talking about, and I get a sense for how the actors like to go and talk, and I'll rewrite things specifically based on how the actors like to go and talk. So it's like if I find out that there's a part in Saints Row 3 when the tank lands and the player goes, "Oh, fuck my life," and that was written. That wasn't the original line, but earlier in the week, when we were talking with Troy, he said "fuck my life" at one point, and I knew if I wrote that line that way, I knew exactly how he was going to go and say it in the performance, right? Because it's like, okay, this is what he says when he's exasperated about a certain topic, so I'm going to rewrite the script to go and be how he likes to go and talk, because then he's going to nail it on the first read, right? And so I'll do stuff like that. Or like all the Nightblade commercials were written at the end of a session when none of that was written when I brought in the actors. It's just we were recording and having fun, and during a break, I was like, hey, who likes watching trash TV? All right, let's come over here. And then we started, you know what I mean, talking shop about the sorts of gimmicks and what are the sorts of conceits that we think are funny about it, and then it's then it becomes more like guerrilla theater. You know what I mean? So like I wrote all like the Nightblade stuff was all written in like 15 minutes, where it was just us having fun and writing stuff and seeing how to go and play. So it's a mix. Like the cutscenes are pretty manicured.
Right.
You'll go and find like word changes or tweaks. You know what I mean? Like you write a contraction, but they like better this way, or a line sounds really funny on the page, but when you hear it being read aloud, it's like, oh, that doesn't, you know what I mean? That doesn't work, and so you'll change things out. I think a lot of times you'll see a little bit more play in some of the in-game content and things like that, because you're not necessarily a slave to timing and things like that. So it just depends, you know. Like it's like it's less ad-libbing so much as like jazz. You know what I mean? Like you're playing with each other, and then it's like, okay, let's try this. Ooh, that's pure instinct. Let me rewrite to be this. And then like as you figure out what it is, you then go and then write something final and say, okay, boom, this is what the line's going to go and be, because now that I understand where we're both on the same wavelength, this is funny, or this feels right, and that's what you execute on.
Okay.
Yeah, in the case of Phillipe Loren, I think he was also like very eager to kill me quickly. So he didn't want me to ad lib, too much or at all, because it was like, you killed Gat, you die.
Yeah.
No, but I think what he's saying too, I suspect, you correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I suspect you do that more with the key characters, the characters that stay longer in the game and are more present, because their presence itself is
Yeah, you just have more time to get to know them and to do things with, and it just gives you more opportunities. Like if like there's certain characters that you just don't have as much time to go and play around with, because they're in it for a specific moment in time. You know what I mean? Like if like in Saints Row 2, like Tobias. You know what I mean? For instance, the guy who flies the helicopter for you in the Sons of Samedi missions. Like Tobias is only around for a little bit, right? And so you don't have a whole lot of time to go and play with him. So he's going to go and do what he needs to go and do, and then you lose some of the time that you can go and do to make up stuff on the fly. So it's a mix,
Okay. We have some more questions from the chat. Mr. Saints Godzilla asking, I think you may have said it earlier actually, how many days did it take to record all of your lines?
Me?
Yeah.
My recollection is less than an hour, or maybe an hour.
Okay.
What do you remember, Steve?
Yeah, it wasn't.
It wasn't that long.
No, it wasn't long.
Right,
I mean, it's really not like it's literally like 2 cutscenes, right? Like it's not 2, maybe it might be 3. But it's not a lot. You were in and out. It was pretty quick.
And then we did a few takes of each, but not that many. I've seen worse, and so it's pretty quick.
Okay.
And those guys, the pro actors, you'd be amazed at the amount of stuff they can knock out in a 2-hour session. For example, they can do a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, also related, Badger in the chat asking, was there any dialogue recorded that never made it in the game?
Oh yeah, fuck ton. There's a whole lot. Like there's a lot of things. You gotta keep in mind, like a lot of times you write things. Like I mentioned earlier at the top of the stream, sometimes you don't know what the missions are gonna look like. So you write content for one thing, and then you find out that the mission's changed, or the mission gets cut, or sometimes you write a real fun exchange because you think this is going to be good and exciting, but then when you get in the gameplay, you find out, oh shit, the drive is only 30 seconds and not 3 minutes, and so now you got to go and cut it out, or you know what I mean?
Right.
There's a whole lot of content that doesn't get. Sometimes there's things that you think are going to get hooked up, but then they never do. So there's a lot of content that gets written but that doesn't make it all the way in the game. It happens all the time.
And we try to minimize that, obviously, but it's impossible to completely eliminate that. There's a substantial amount of, just like there's a substantial amount of gameplay stuff and art assets and other assets that don't make it into a finished game.
Yeah.
Well, and you also figure, like, philosophically, it's like if you're in the recording studio and I have you for 2 hours, and like we have some extra time, it's better to go and get some extra content that, if we think it's useful and productive and we can get it done, then like we can go and get a little bit more, and if we get to use it, awesome. We have extra bullets in our gun, you know what I mean? And if we don't, then we don't need it. But I'd rather have options, So and sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of doing that or the time. But whenever we can, I think there's a decent amount of things. Sometimes I think in Saints Row 3 was befell. There was one time when we had a fucking scare.
I'm sorry.
That's right. Yeah.
What's your cat's name?
That's Ava.
Ava? I threw you off there.
Yeah, it's not a lady. So there was a time when we had to cut some missions, and it was funny because you make some mission cuts and you're going through and you're playing the game, and then like several months later, you get feedback about something not making sense, and it's like, what are you talking about? It makes perfect sense. And then oh shit, that thing that explained that was totally cut. Oh my god. And then you got to go and find a way to go and like back-explain something or try to work something back in because you forget like, oh well, the cutscenes all connect just fine, but the setup for this joke happened in the in-game portion of that mission, and so it's like, oh, because that's cut over there, the payoff over here doesn't make sense, and so now we gotta, refit that around. So it's it's a little wacky.
Yeah, I've always wondered, like, because it to me just seems like the challenge of writing for a game is significantly different than writing for film or a TV show or anything like that, because there's
totally
so many
different.
because there's so many parts that don't get finished until like right at the end, and you're always juggling and shuffling everything around.
Well, even the structure of how you write is different, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like you like there's a lot of writing in games that is like if you were to apply the philosophy of what you do in games to a movie or TV show, it's bad writing, right? But it's like, for instance, an example would be in like Saints Row games. There's a reason why when you start the mission, in a lot of cases, the characters repeat information that you just saw in the cutscenes.
Right.
And it's because you don't know if the player did button through the cutscene, right? And so you got to make sure that those players still have an understanding of what's going on, even if they didn't watch the cutscene. Likewise, if they're watching a movie, you can reasonably assume that they're watching the movie in one sitting.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like you can assume that it's all the beginning, middle, and end. If it's a video game, you don't know if the next mission is played immediately afterwards, or if the person went on vacation, or if they put it down, or if they got sick and they couldn't play it for 2 weeks. And so you have no idea when they come back to that. And so every time they restart a mission, it has to be a new invitation to making them understand what's going on without getting so deep in the weeds. And so, like, it gets into situations where you have to be like, look over there, it's Death Mountain, which is like not good writing, but you have to do it because you need to go and convey that information to people who might forget that Death Mountain is important.
And I remember Steve and I think we would agree, we've always been fascinated with so there's another aspect where writing for games is different, and that's the interactive impact on what I would call the narrative structure and how you approach the whole structure, especially when it comes to choices for the player and branching, which is the holy grail in a way, but also a total mindfuck. I mean, it can drive you completely crazy.
Yeah.
We were working on a game that we never finished together called Downfall, where we wanted to really sort of explore that. And that, to me, is a really fascinating aspect of it, but it's really hard.
Yeah, it's because,
it's really hard.
Because, even when you see games do it, it's generally down to, a binary choice.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, and I totally get it. It's just because the scale, the idea of every permutation, especially if it's
So it's a mushrooming of the branching, right?
Yeah,
and it goes exponential real fast.
Yeah,
right?
and it's just how different is everything going to be? Is it like somebody's hat is a different color in this cutscene, or did their characterization change entirely?
And now I play this in that order, and now you want to bring back this character, but apparently he died in the other branch, so you have a bit of a problem. But it is at the same time, I think you would agree, right? I mean, it is really fascinating to try to tackle that, right? It's really interesting.
Oh, it's great. There's a lot of exciting things that you can do, right?
Yeah.
And it's it's a real fun challenge, and finding things that you can only do in your medium is really fun, and it's interesting. And I think that there's a lot the games that are, when stuff like that connects, man, it feels so good.
It's awesome.
And
I think games have really, we barely started scratching the surface in terms of that. I think we will see with time, right? Mm-hmm. Amazing improvements in that. But it is a beast. It really is.
Yeah, I bet.
It really is.
And that reminds me of a thing I've seen other developers and indie developers that I follow on Twitter. Specifically, anybody who's done any writing complains frequently about that. Lots of people don't realize there's a difference between being a writer and being a narrative designer, because it seems like writing characters in a story is a significantly different task from writing to make sure the events are paced correctly and inform players and all that stuff. That feels entirely separate.
I wouldn't call it separate as much as complementary.
There's a lot of overlapping, but it feels like
there's
either
a difference. There's a big difference.
It feels like either one could be its own job.
Right. Oh yeah.
I think that's weird about that though. I don't disagree with the sentiment. It's just like anything in a there is no standardized understanding of what a role is in a game
Right.
company. And so a lot of times, some things like that, it's like you're playing a game of putting a different title on your business card. You know what I mean? Because like if someone says that they're a producer, like that could mean 15 different things at 15 different studios. Like
Right.
what their responsibilities are, what they try to go and do. A narrative designer is a Smurf term. It can mean anything to a bunch of different things, and it's like it's hard to go and quantify
Yeah.
any titles like that,
Yeah.
because it's just
Right.
what is like even like internal titles are different studios, right? Like if someone says that they're a senior artist, if I go up to someone and say like senior artist, lead artist, principal artist, those orders could mean different things at different studios, right?
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
no
Totally.
standard. It doesn't, and so it's just
Totally.
like what does it all mean? It's all relative.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I mean, creative director, right? We've both been creative directors at Volition, right? Well, you go to a lot of places, and the creative director is really what I would call a design director or a super design director, but it's systematically a designer.
Uh-huh.
Volition hasn't taken that approach so far. What the creative director does is they may have a discipline they come from, right?
Right.
But their job is to sort of harmonize the different art disciplines and make sure that their combination gives you the best possible result.
Okay.
Which is fundamentally different than just focusing on design and it's just not to say that design is not all important, right? It's just a
Right.
very different approach to the. But you go to Ubi, for example, and a creative director will be a designer.
Okay.
Yeah. At least so far, that might
And
change.
then and you go to other studios, and a designer.
It's different. Yeah.
If someone says a designer, they just mean purely UX.
Yep.
And it has nothing to do with
Yeah.
game design.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything is it's all like what a person does is so much more than what a title is, and so that's why I feel like relying on that to say what your job description is it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, like,
Quite
who
work.
knows? Who knows what something is?
Yeah, it's
Right.
we're still too new, too recent, although we've started to age. But I'm not even joking, right? With it. We're still too new a medium to really have very formalized
Totally.
structures and titles. And just like the studios operate very differently,
Yeah.
they have very different titles and they mean very different things. So it's kind of which doesn't make life easier for the people who work in the industry when they try to get another job at a different place, because
Right.
sometimes it's misleading, right?
We have another question from the chat from Badger again, asking, what was the reason the city's name was changed from Bridgeport to Steelport?
Steve?
I don't remember. At one point, it was called Southern Cross.
Yep, I remember that. I remember that too.
Like the naming of a city has always been a weird thing. Where like a lot of times it's just like there was no. I don't remember there being a specific reason of why Steelport over Bridgeport. I think it was here's a bunch of potential names. This one seems to be gaining some traction. Oh, we don't have a lot of bridges. Why do we call it Bridgeport? You know what I mean? Like, any number of things. But it wasn't like there was no like meaningful meaningful thing that I can think of.
If you remember, that dates back to SR1, right? But the name Saints Row itself, it was just Alvin Manji. He was a designer on the team. We were looking for a name for the game, right? And we came up with a bunch of things, and Alvin came up with Saints Row, right? And we're like, yeah, that's cool. So, right? I mean, it's not like we had this, shaft of light and magical moment, and we went, if we combine Saints and Row, and it's going to work with their church. I mean, we got it when he said Saints Row. We had the church, but
That was the name of the district. We knew that was the name of the district that you started naming.
but it's not like we set out to sort of. It just happened.
Right.
At least that's
All
my
right.
recollection. Right?
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
it was a brainstorming. We were
Yeah,
bringing out ideas.
yeah.
Like, oh yeah, that sounds all right.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
We have another question from the chat from Matrix Vingian asking, regarding Saints Row 1, how much research was there on real-world gangs? I heard you had a genuine tagger for your research purposes.
We did, right?
We did.
Yep, we did.
We brought in some people to or one individual in particular to go and
Educate us.
go and go through things and make
Yeah.
sure we weren't stepping on any third rails.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think we were all pretty conscious of the fact that, clearly we were not exactly specialists. We hadn't lived that life. We knew that. We never for a moment, tried to pretend like we did.
Right.
And I think maybe it played a part in us deciding that we actually wanted to go with humor as one of the tenets of the game, that'd be funny. Right? We never set out to make a gang simulator, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to not look completely, wrong when we were approaching certain things.
Right.
But we also knew that we were not at all special. If you want a story, I have a funny story to tell you. You'll remember that, Steve. We once the game was kind of underway, that's Saints Row 1, right? There were a bunch of people, I forget where it was, but they started a sort of sub-website. I think it was either Game Informer or one of the gaming sites, right?
Jesus.
Called the United People of Saints Row. He knows what's coming. Anyway. So that was genuine people, right? They had heard of the game, they were excited about it, and they started United Peoples of Saints Row, and we noticed that, and we said, well, this is cool. People are interested in the game. We should thank them and try to pay them back, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I contacted them and I said, hey, I'm the producer on the game. If you guys want to ask questions, we'll try to answer them. And the first reaction was like, yeah, fuck off, right? You're not the producer. And I'm like, no, check my email address. I'm at Volition. Send us questions, and we started, in exchange, the guys went ballistic, right? Because at the time it was pretty rare, right?
Yeah.
And so one of our marketing people, who I'm not going to mention by name, right, got wind of that and said, guys, this is not how you do it, right? What we're going to do is we're going to start a competing site on that same, and it will be called, I forget how it was called, but anyway, she wanted to hijack that so we could control the message, right? So that person went in there and started the competing site with a whole blurb about, come here, this is the real thing, and then the tagline at the end was like, stay sane, bangers. And we were like, oh my God.
What?
Yeah. And we were like so embarrassed. We were like, this is not the kind of stuff we wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, please don't do that. So, of course, the outcome was like the other side, withered on the vine and disappeared. And the United People of Saints Row actually did pretty well. It had its steady share of people who, and one of them who was really dedicated, we actually, send him a signed, with a disc, frame thing.
Totally.
So he was pretty happy. But do you remember that? Do you remember the Stay Sane Bangers? Oh my God. It was so embarrassing. It was like...
So bad.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that was not good.
No.
That was great.
Well, it was like good, but not.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Anyway.
Well, I guess before we start wrapping everything up, should we take a look at one of the cutscenes you actually worked on?
Oh, sure.
Because I'm sure that the chat wants to hear you say at least one line for the stream or something like that.
Oh, God.
We'll take a quick look here.
This is where I get pissed off, I think.
Yeah, I believe this is the first cutscene you pop up in.
Yeah.
You have any idea who you're fucking with here?
Of course. A remarkable likeness. These visions are Viola and Kiki, and I am Phillipe Loren, chairman of a multinational organization called the Syndicate.
Never heard of it.
Evidently not, or you would not have robbed our bank. Perhaps you wonder why you are still breathing at this point.
Actually, I wonder why my foot's not up your ass at this point.
Like it or not, Mr. Gatt, our organization is expanding into Stillwater. I am offering you the chance to leverage your assets against your lives. Ladies?
You may continue to operate the Saint Soltor Media Group as you see fit, in exchange for 66% of your monthly gross revenue.
That is before taxes, of course.
Listen, you French fuck.
Please. I am Belgian.
So make yourself a fucking waffle. We done here.
And I had so hoped to come to a rational business arrangement.
Not without you.
What, there's like half a dozen guys? I can take them.
What about the plane?
I'll fly it back to Stillwater.
Johnny, you can't even drive stick. How you gonna fly a plane?
Details. Just cover the boss. Go. I got this.
The one thing I guess with you only voicing in cutscenes is that you never got to do any of the barks or grunts that like player characters have to do.
No.
Okay.
Well, you did a little impact for me getting your face slammed into the window.
Oh yeah. I did some
Yeah, but you
grunting
didn't
for
do
that.
the full battery of
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
You
But
never
not-
actually kill him in a.
Yeah.
The only time he ever fights is in that cutscene, so he
Yeah.
just did some efforts for that sequence.
Yeah, but I didn't do a full bank.
Yeah.
Like no pain sounds, and I did some screaming, if I remember right. And then there was the whole thing trying to break that door, where I had to switch to sort of French and stuff.
Yeah.
It was really fascinating to me. I had not seen that cutscene since the game came out, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I look at it and hear myself, I don't even think it's me.
Really?
Seriously.
Huh.
It took me a while to go, oh, okay, that's my voice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it sounds like you're not putting on that much of a different voice to me for
I mean,
when
I
you're
have
doing
just
that.
as thick a French accent.
I mean,
now
it's definitely exaggerated, but like I can still tell it's you, and it's like, it's.
I guess it's harder for me. I'm not being sarcastic, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's a disconnect. Like it took me like
Right.
30 seconds, literally, to go. That's actually your voice.
Yeah.
I didn't. I was like, what? Really?
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird. That's also because I don't do that very often, right? So.
Right.
It's a little bit like when you see yourself on camera, right? You kind of feel self-conscious and you feel weird. And
Totally. Oh God,
so
I'm more
that's it.
self-conscious now. I wasn't thinking about it. But no, yeah, I totally get that. Doing this and like I did a little bit of voice acting for a thing, but it was temp VO for a different game, Deep
Right.
Silver thing.
Right.
But even doing that, and I heard myself later, it was
It sounded weird.
weird.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
especially just because
Yeah.
my voice was one that was specifically had a lot of post processing on it. And so like they just like it was my voice, and I had to listen to it like 10 times before I realized like that wasn't just like some other guy doing like a generic like soldier over the radio voice or something like that.
Was you?
Yeah, it's super weird. I get it though.
And you saw how nice a role Steve gave me, right? I'm such a nice guy. Right?
There was the original version of that cutscene. Well, actually, there's a couple of different versions of it, but there was a version of the cut script where it was like it was a bullfight, and Loren is just like fucking sticking Johnny with a knife like over and over again as he's just dancing around like a fucking matador and bleeding him out. And I remember Danny and Paul was like, "This is really fucking depressing." Watching Johnny get stabbed to death.
Why did you kill Johnny?
What?
Why did you kill Johnny?
He didn't originally. No. I mean, like originally he wasn't supposed to die.
I know.
Like at the first, no. There's a version of the game where he lived the entire way through.
Yeah.
And then THQ said they wanted me to kill Johnny.
Oh, I
And
didn't
so-
remember that. It was Danny and Paul?
No, because originally he in the original version, Johnny Gat was captured by Loren and was forced to go and compete in it's where Genki came from. Because originally it was like a Running Man company. I mean, it was the Running Man.
Oh,
company.
yeah. I remember
So Gat
that.
was forced to compete, and you rescue Gat from
Yeah.
this super competition, and then he's all geared up for revenge, and then people were like, we need to have more like emotional weight. Like, what if we kill Johnny Gat? I'm like, all right, like let's go and we do it. So then we did a version where we kill Johnny Gat, and then I had this scene where Shondi like gives this eulogy for Gat, and it's after he gets stabbed to death, and then THQ comes back and like this is really fucking sad. And the entire plot was then about Shondi dealing with survivor's guilt, and like there's the moment she cuts her hair and has like her Felicity moment, and this entire thing was all about like friends dealing with the loss of their friend and it impacted everything. And then THQ's like, this is fucking depressing, dude. Like, we can't do this shit. I'm like, okay, new plan. And so like he goes and it happens off camera and we don't see it. And I remember in a team meeting, Maitri was like, well, you don't see him on camera, right? And I'm like, no. And they're like, so that means that he's really alive. And I'm like, no, he's dead. He's gonna be fucking dead. He's gonna stay dead. Like, nah, people are gonna like him. And everyone's like, oh, we really want him alive. There was a tag at one point. There was a version of it too, where at the end of there's a tag at the end of the game where they used the cloning technology that made like Oleg and the Brutes that had like they did the DLC with like the silly Johnny tag, but
Right.
originally it was like legit like Johnny Dad is back alive even though you thought he was dead and he's working for the Syndicate now and he's taking over, and so there was like him as like the kingpin of the bad guys to go and like tee up you having to go and fight Johnny Gad as a villain in a potential Saints Row 4 back in the day before everything all just got out of control. There's a bunch of weird like this story of Saints Row 3 has underwent so many different iterations and
man.
changes, and you know what I mean.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wish we could talk about all of that for like even longer, because I'm super interested. I'm always interested in like any work being done for a game that doesn't end up in the final product.
We got a few for you.
I mean, we've done streams in the past where we've shown older builds and stuff where there's some drastically different stuff in them. But unfortunately, we're going to have to start wrapping up the stream here.
Fine, you don't like us. Just
What?
come out and say it.
No, that is not it.
All right.
But yeah, it's 10 after 5. We're going to have to start wrapping up. But I do want to say, Steve, thank you so much for being on the stream. It is super cool to hear these stories from you and stuff. It's I started working here many years after you left, so I never got to interact with you or anything, but getting to meet you was like really fucking cool. So
He's okay.
Thanks.
Just okay?
Yeah, he's all right.
I'm aggressively mediocre.
Wrestling aside, he's all right.
But Steve, thank you so much for being on stream. And some other time, it might I would love to hear those other SR3 stories from you. But yeah, thanks for being on stream, man.
No problem. Hope you guys have a great day.
Yeah, you too. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.
Later.
All right, and Jacques, also for you, thanks for being on stream. It's been super cool hearing some of this stuff.
You're quite welcome. My pleasure.
Even the Dakar Rally stuff was pretty dope to hear, honestly. But yeah.
Days of it's my personal Days of Thunder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Long time ago. Thank you for inviting me. It was fun, and I'm glad Steve could join us. He's a fantastic writer and person, and I love him dearly.
Yeah,
so.
he seems pretty cool.
Oh, he's very cool.
And before we go,
talented.
Yeah. Before we go, is there any way you could do a line as Philippe?
Oh, sure. Which one? Because I'm not sure I remember them.
I mean, we can scrub through here real quick.
How about, well, you guys pick. I'll say whatever you want me to say from that thing. These visions are Viola and Kiki. Is that more or less like it?
I mean, it sounds like, I think I just played the video by accident again. Yeah, that's what I thought I heard. But
it's been 8 years, right? So my voice may have changed a little bit.
Right.
I occasionally smoke, meaning I'm a smoker.
Yeah.
So
I think the line you should also do, by the way, is "Please, I am Belgian."
Please, I am Belgian.
Good.
Which I'm not. So I don't know if you guys know, and if I have time, but there's a running joke there because the French, the Belgians, and the Swiss, by the way, all exchange jokes about each other. So the whole notion of being Belgian versus French has connotations for people who are from that country. Yeah.
I guess one more thing before we go is, we talked about in the past, we are working on a new project. We can't say what it... you got a lot to catch up on if you didn't know.
The age is a terrible thing.
But, we can't say much about what we're working on yet, but what we can say is, how do you feel about the current project we're working on?
Excited. It's very interesting. I hope people will enjoy it when they see it, and I hope I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk to everyone about it reasonably soon. And when we can, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
But right now...
You'll definitely know through these streams and our social media.
Yeah,
so.
mum's the word right now. We can't... They'd shoot us.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming. We're streaming one more time tomorrow morning. We'll have Deep Silver Fish Labs on, talking about their work on the port of SR3 to the Switch. And we'll be playing a little bit more of the game. And yeah, we'll see you later. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for following us.